October 1860. 300 acres of palaces, lakes, pavilions, the Yuanming Yuan, the old summer palace, burning for 3 days. Ash falling on Beijing. French and British soldiers walking out with jade, silk, mechanical clocks shoved into their packs before they even set the fires.
Okay.
18 months later, those same powers, same army, same officers, in some cases the same individual men, are arming and training Qing troops to defend that emperor's dynasty.
Hang on.
Hmm.
They burnt his house down and then helped him keep his job.
Yes.
No, sorry, that can't be. Say it again, because I think my brain refused it the first time.
They literally burned down the emperor's house and then turned around and saved his throne. That's Hevier's line, more or less. James Hevier, English Lessons, it's the book on this. He calls it pedagogy. They were teaching the Qing a lesson and then propping them up to apply it.
Pedagogy? So burning down a 300-acre palace complex is, what, a teaching moment?
Hevier's argument is that it was deliberate, that the British knew exactly what they were doing. Humiliate the emperor publicly, then make him dependent on you. It's the most Victorian thing imaginable.
It's the 19th century version of overthrowing Saddam and then begging the Baathists to come back and run the police, which we also did, by the way.
It's exactly that. And the man giving the order to burn, the man whose signature is on the destruction of the Summer Palace, is Lord Elgin, the 8th Earl.
Elgin as in...
Yes.
Elgin as in the Parthenon Elgin?
His son.
You are joking.
Not joking. Thomas Bruce, 7th Earl of Elgin, takes the marbles off the Parthenon, 1801 to 1812 roughly. His son James Bruce, 8th Earl of Elgin, burns the Summer Palace, 1860. Father and son. Family business.
The Elgins, ruining great civilization's heritage since 1801. That should be on the family crest.
It almost is. Theodore Warrond edited the 8th Earl's letters and journals, published in the 1870s, and you can read him agonising over the decision. He genuinely sweats over it for pages.
Oh, poor him. Tortured Victorian conscience. Did he sweat over the marbles too, or was that more of a smash and grab energy?
Well, that's the dad. The dad was less reflective. The dad just had them shipped.
Right, but here's the thing, and I want to sit with this for a second. Byron was already calling the father a vandal in 1812. There's that poem, The Curse of Minerva. Byron is furious. He's writing in real time, this man is a vandal, this is a crime. So it's not even like we're imposing modern values on them. Their contemporaries thought it was disgusting.
Byron writes, and I'm doing this from memory, so don't sue me, something like, "Loathed in life, nor pardoned in the dust, may hate pursue his sacrilegious lust." About Elgin, about a sitting British aristocrat.
That's a bar.
It's a hell of a bar.
And what kills me is that both campaigns are still running. Like right now, today, the Greek government has a permanent diplomatic mission devoted to getting the marbles back. And the Chinese state has a whole programme buying up and repatriating Summer Palace artefacts at auction. The same family. 2 countries. 1 museum.
There's a bronze rat head and a bronze rabbit head from the Summer Palace that sold at Christie's in 2009, Yves Saint Laurent's estate. And a Chinese buyer bid 14 million euros each and then refused to pay as a protest.
That's incredible.
He was making a point.
So the family that took the marbles also burned the palace, and now both nations are trying to get their stuff back from the British Museum and Christie's. The Elgin chin of cultural crimes. It's hereditary.
The Habsburg chin of vandalism, yes.
Okay, but I want to be fair to him for a second. The son. Why does he burn the palace? Because surely even a Bruce needs some reason.
So this is where it gets interesting and slightly less clean than imperial monsters torch China for fun. There's a British negotiator called Harry Parkes, he's the consul, and a French priest, a Russian, and a small party of others go forward under a flag of truce to negotiate. The Qing arrest them. 20 Europeans, give or take. They're tortured for weeks. Most of them die.
Tortured how?
Bound with wet ropes that contracted as they dried, left in courtyards. Some of them you couldn't recognise when the bodies came back. Parkes himself survived, somehow. He was the lucky one. And Elgin Jr. gets the bodies back, and he decides he has to do something so emphatic the Qing will never do this again. He considers burning the Forbidden City, and decides that's a step too far. Too many ordinary people live nearby. So he picks the Summer Palace instead. The Emperor's private paradise, his Versailles.
So it's revenge. Personal revenge.
It's revenge dressed as policy. Heavier would say it's both, punishment and pedagogy. But yes, the immediate trigger is 20 corpses.
Right. And, okay, 20 Europeans, that's awful. I'm not dismissing it. But your response is to burn 300 acres of irreplaceable art, libraries, the imperial collection going back centuries.
Libraries, yes. Manuscripts that existed nowhere else.
That is so far past proportionate. It's in a different zip code. That is, by any 19th century standard, never mind ours, a war crime. Wellington wouldn't have done that.
Well, Wellington had Spain.
Fair. Wellington did some things. Okay, scratch Wellington.
But you're right that contemporary opinion was split. There were MPs in London who were appalled. Victor Hugo writes this incredible letter a few years later, addressed to Captain Butler, who'd written asking for his thoughts on the China expedition. And Hugo says, "You call yourselves civilized and the Chinese barbarians. This is what civilization has done to barbarism." He calls the British and French two bandits. Two bandits breaking into a museum.
Hugo had range.
Hugo had range. And that letter is still taught in Chinese schools. The Summer Palace fire is not a historical curiosity in China. It's a foundational national grievance. Every Chinese schoolchild knows it.
And meanwhile in Britain, we mostly don't.
We mostly don't.
Cool.
Right, so hold all of that. October 1860, smoke over Beijing. And now I want you to do something hard, which is hold in your head a second event happening at the same time. Because while this is going on in the north...
The Taiping.
The Taiping are on the move. Summer 1860, exactly the months the Anglo-French expedition is grinding up toward Beijing, Li Shucheng, the loyal king, is breaking the Qing encirclement of Nanjing and exploding eastward. He takes Suzhou in June. By August, he's within 30 miles of Shanghai.
Wait, so at the same moment, literally the same weeks, there are two foreign-ish armies converging on Qing China from opposite directions.
From opposite directions for opposite reasons, and the Qing dynasty is the meat in the sandwich. Stephen Platt, Autumn in the Heavenly Kingdom, which is the book you have to read on this, Platt's whole organising insight is that you cannot understand either war without the other. They're not parallel, they're entangled.
Okay, I need to sit with this because I genuinely never put these two events in the same year in my head. I had the Opium Wars in one mental drawer and the Taiping in another, and...
Everybody does this, including, in fairness, a lot of historians until Platt. It got siloed. Opium Wars are about Britain, Taiping is about China, and ne'er the twain shall meet on a syllabus.
But it's the same year. It's the same month in some cases.
Same month. The Xianfeng Emperor flees Beijing in a covered cart in early September 1860. They call it a hunting expedition to Rehe, which is the dignified fiction. But it's a panic. He's 30 years old. He's been emperor for 10 years. He's an opium addict. He's tubercular. And he is now bouncing in a cart north out of his own capital while the British and French take it apart.
And he never comes back.
He never comes back. He dies in that hunting lodge in August 1861, aged 30, leaves a 5-year-old son, and the regency that gets set up through some absolutely Byzantine palace coup is what produces the Empress Dowager Cixi.
So the Summer Palace fire literally produces Cixi.
The fire produces Cixi, who then runs China in one form or another for the next 47 years, through the Sino-Japanese War, the Boxer Rebellion, the failed 100 Days Reform, all of it. An entire historical era is born in the smoke of one palace.
That's... Okay, I want to dwell there, because that's not a small thing. That's basically saying the entire shape of late Qing China, and therefore the Republic, and the Revolution, and arguably modern China, is downstream of Elgin Jr. having a bad week.
Downstream of Elgin Jr. having a bad week and 20 Europeans being tortured to death in a Beijing courtyard, yes.
And the Taiping, where are they in this? Because if I'm Hong Xiuquan sitting in Nanjing in autumn 1860, I'm being handed the gift of a millennium.
You are. The Qing emperor has fled his capital. His palace is on fire. His best troops are pinned down by Europeans in the north. The road to Beijing is functionally open.
And they don't take it.
Li Shucheng goes east toward Shanghai, toward money. And this is one of the great what-ifs of Chinese history. Platt absolutely chews on this. If the Taiping had marched north in autumn 1860, while the British were doing the heavy lifting against the Qing for them,
They could have walked into Beijing.
they could plausibly have walked into Beijing. Now, counter-argument, and this is your Tianjin incident point that I know you're going to make.
You know me too well.
The Taiping of 1860 is not the Taiping of 1853. They've already had their internal bloodbath in 1856, the East King's Purge, the West King's Purge, Shidakai's defection. They're hollowed out at the top. The army's good, particularly Li Shucheng's, but the central political machine is broken. So could they have actually held Beijing? I'm not sure.
That they could have been there. They could have presented the British with a fait accompli. Imagine Elgin marching into Beijing and finding Hong Xiuquan on the throne.
What a meeting that would have been.
Hello, I'm Jesus' younger brother. Would you like some tea?
Tea's fine, but the opium isn't on the table, so we're going to have to renegotiate.
We'll get to that. We'll absolutely get to that. But, okay, they don't march on Beijing. They go for Shanghai, which is, what, the richest port in Asia at this point?
It's the richest port in Asia. It's the entry point for European trade. It's where the silk goes out and the silver comes in. And it's protected by almost nothing. The Qing garrison is a joke. The walls are medieval. The whole defence of Shanghai in summer 1860 rests on a few thousand foreign troops who are not supposed to be intervening in a Chinese civil war, and a panicked merchant community who are about to do something genuinely strange.
Hire an American.
Hire an American. Yes, take it away. Right, okay. Frederick Townsend Ward. And I want you to picture this man's CV before he arrives in Shanghai, because it's a lot. Born Salem, Massachusetts, 1831. He is 29 years old in 1860. He's younger than most people finishing their first real job. 29. By 29, he has, and I want to make sure I have these in roughly the right order, gone to sea as a teenager, attempted West Point and washed out, fought in the Crimean War on the French side as a junior officer. Why the French side? Because the Americans weren't fighting and he wanted in. He's a war tourist. Then he runs guns in Mexico. Then he tries to join William Walker's filibustering expedition in Nicaragua. Walker being the guy who briefly made himself president of Nicaragua and tried to legalise slavery there.
Briefly being the operative word. Walker got shot. Ward didn't make it to him in time, which is probably the only reason he was available for the next gig. And then he shows up in Shanghai in early 1860 looking for work.
He's a chancer.
He's a chancer. He is the chancer. He is the prototype of every guy who's ever shown up at a war zone with a duffel bag and a press pass he printed himself. Caleb Carr wrote a book about him called The Devil Soldier. And Carr is a fan, by the way. That's the polite version.
The Devil Soldier is the friendly nickname.
That's how good he was at PR. And the Shanghai merchants, a consortium of Chinese bankers and silk traders, this is important, give him money to raise a force. Not the British government, not the Qing government, Chinese merchants. They are terrified that Li Shucheng is going to walk in and burn their warehouses.
And who does Ward recruit?
Oh, this is my favourite part. Filipino sailors. European deserters. Guys who've jumped ship from the Royal Navy, the French Navy, the Merchant Marine. And waterfront drunks. Just the men of Shanghai's bars. He goes around the bars, he hires them out of the bars.
He runs a press gang through Shanghai's pubs.
And their first major operation, Richard Smith covers this in Mercenaries and Mandarins, which is the dry academic version of Carr's book. Their first major operation is at Songjiang in July 1860, and it is a catastrophe. Smith says they were drunk by mid-morning and routed by mid-afternoon.
I want to be clear that detail is in a peer-reviewed academic monograph. It's not gossip. Richard Smith writes it down in a footnote like it's the most normal thing in the world.
Drunk by mid-morning. The Taiping defenders, who are not drunk, who are religious fanatics who don't drink, counterattack, and Ward's army basically falls over. Ward himself is shot through both cheeks, loses several teeth. He has to be carried off the field on a litter, bleeding out of his face.
And this man,
2 years later, is going to be commanding the ever-victorious army, which, at this point, is, the ever-drunk army? The ever-routed army? The toothless army?
the rebrand is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It is the greatest rebrand in 19th century military history, ever victorious. From drunken Filipino sailors who got shot in the face to ever victorious. That's marketing.
And what gets me, though, is, funny as that is, there's something genuinely important under it. Because who paid for this? Not London, not Washington. A consortium of Shanghai silk merchants and Cantonese bankers. They didn't go to a state for protection. They went to a market.
They privatised their own defence.
They privatised their own defence. And if you want a genealogy of the private military company, you can draw a line back through the East India Company's armies back to the condottieri in Renaissance Italy, these freelance captains who'd rent themselves and their men to whichever Italian city-state was paying, and forward through the post-1945 mercenary scene to Blackwater, to Wagner. Ward is sitting right in the middle of that line.
And Wagner is the comparison that's almost too on the nose, right? Because Wagner is officially deniable. Wagner's officially private. Wagner's funded by pick your oligarch. And yet it functions as an arm of state policy when the state needs it to.
Exactly the same structure. The ever-victorious army is officially a private outfit funded by Shanghai capital. But the moment it matters, the Qing state adopts it, ranks it, pays it. The British and American consulates wink at it. And it's basically the same idea Wagner has. Rent an army, deniable, expendable. Ward just did it 160 years earlier.
And the silk merchants are basically Prigozhin in this analogy.
The Shanghai Banking Guild as Prigozhin. I'll allow it.
Does this make it less imperialist, though? That's what I keep getting stuck on, because the standard story is the British Empire crushed the Taiping. But if the money is Chinese, and the troops are eventually Chinese, and only the officers are Western...
I think it makes it more imperialist, actually, or more insidious. Because formal empire, you can see, formal empire wears a uniform. This is capital crossing borders and buying violence, and there's no flag at all. It's the empire of money rather than the empire of the flag. And the empire of money is harder to throw off because you can't tell when it's arrived.
Yeah, that lands.
Anyway, back to Ward bleeding out of his face on a litter in Songjiang.
Back to Ward and his teeth.
Right. So, and this is where it gets interesting. Because while we're laughing about Ward and his face wound, there's a much bigger thing happening in the background that decides everything.
Go on.
Remember what Hong Rengan offered the British?
When he comes back from Hong Kong, he's basically got this dazzling shopping list for the West. Free trade, religious freedom, joint river navigation, the whole thing. Adam Smith with extra Jesus.
Right, the Zizeng Chinpian guy, the man with the blueprint.
The blueprint guy. And he offers all of that to Frederick Bruce, who, by the way, is Lord Elgin's younger brother, because of course he is. The Bruces are running British China policy as a family business at this point.
One brother burns the palace, the other ignores the Prime Minister. The Bruce brothers, ruining East Asia in stereo.
In stereo, exactly. So Hong Rengan offers all of this, and there's one thing he won't budge on. No opium.
Ah.
Hang on, because when was the Treaty of Tianjin actually ratified? Because I'm doing some maths in my head here and I don't like where it's going.
1858 signed, ratified October 1860, literally weeks after the Summer Palace burns. And one of its key provisions
Is the legalization of opium imports into China.
is the legalization of opium imports into China.
So, let me get this straight. In October 1860, in the same month, Britain finishes burning the Emperor's palace, forces the Emperor to legalise the drug they've been smuggling, and is being offered a treaty with the rebels that explicitly bans the drug. In the same month, the same 30 days. They torch his house, they force the drug legalisation through, and they're being handed an exit from the whole mess by the other side, who explicitly won't take the drug. And they bin the offer?
And the reason isn't even complicated. It's right there in the Foreign Office files if you want to read it.
That's not realpolitik, that's narcopolitik.
That's exactly what it is.
Julia Lovell makes this point really cleanly in the Opium War, doesn't she? That the British state by this point is structurally addicted to opium revenue. Not metaphorically, structurally.
Structurally. And you can put numbers on it. In the 1830s, the East India Company is getting somewhere around 15% of its total revenue from opium. 15%!
From a single product, but nobody is supposed to be selling.
That nobody is supposed to be selling. And it's worse than that, because Bengal, large parts of Bengal, has been agriculturally reorganised to grow poppies. Peasants who used to grow food are now growing the raw material for the Chinese market.
So there's a hunger angle in India too. People are growing poppies instead of rice.
There's a hunger angle in India that nobody talks about, because it's not as photogenic as the Summer Palace. And the whole machine, the Calcutta auctions, the clipper ships, the Canton warehouses, the silver flowing back, the entire British Asian economy is plumbed through opium. It's the central nervous system of the empire east of Suez.
Britain isn't running an empire. Britain is running a cartel with a flag.
And I don't think that's even rhetorical. I think it's just descriptive. If you described the British operation in Bengal Canton in 1860 to someone who didn't know the names, vertically integrated production, captive distribution, state enforcement of access, violence against rival regimes, they'd say cartel.
And the Taiping are the rival regime that won't let them in.
The Taiping are the rival regime that won't let them in. They execute dealers, they execute users. Hong Xiuquan's theology, and this is one of the few places where his theology is, let's say, conventionally moral. Opium is poison from the demon kings. Smoking it is sin, and the punishment is death.
So Britain looks at this and goes, we can do business with the people who buy our product, or we can do business with the people who execute our customers.
And that's why the Taiping had to lose. They were threatening the empire's most profitable export.
I feel like every 10 minutes of this episode you hand me a number or a date that makes the previous thing worse, and somehow this is the worst one.
And what makes it nauseating, really nauseating, is that this isn't a hidden calculation. You can read Bruce's dispatches, you can read the Foreign Office memos. They talk about it openly. The fear that the Taiping will disrupt commerce in the staples. That's the phrase, disrupt commerce in the staples.
Staples, lovely. Tea, silk, and heroin.
Tea, silk, and heroin, the three pillars.
And this is why I keep coming back to, When you said the ever-victorious army being privately funded makes it more insidious, not less, because this is the same shape, isn't it? You can't see the empire because the empire is just protecting the supply chain. There's no flag, there's just product.
There's just product. And the Qing become the distributor. The Taiping refuse to be the distributor. And then it's not even a hard choice.
Okay, I want to move on because I genuinely feel a bit sick. Who's the next idiot to wash up in Nanjing?
Oh, you're going to love this one. Issachar Roberts.
Issachar. There has never been an Issachar in history who wasn't about to have a bad time.
Issachar Jackox Roberts, Tennessee Baptist. And here's the thing. He is the Western missionary who back in 1847 briefly tutored Hong Xiuquan in Canton. Couple of months, Hong wanted to be baptized. Roberts refused, thought he wasn't ready, didn't quite trust the visions.
Wait, the Baptist refused to baptize Hong?
The Baptist refused to baptize Hong, which is, in retrospect, probably the most consequential pastoral decision of the 19th century.
Because if Roberts baptizes him in 1847, Hong is officially a Baptist, Hong has Western Christian credentials.
And Hong leaves Canton humiliated, goes back to Guangxi feeling rejected by the official church, and starts doing his own thing. The whole theological weirdness, the Heavenly Father speaking through Yang, the Bible edits, all of it flows from that refusal, at least in part.
So Roberts is, in some real sense, a co-author of the Taiping Rebellion by not doing something.
By not doing something. By withholding a sacrament. And then, and this is what makes the story unbearable, in 1860, when Hong Rengan invites foreign missionaries to Nanjing, who turns up?
No.
Issachar Roberts. Coming back into Hong Xiuquan's life 13 years later, genuinely hoping, to be the spiritual director of the new Christian China.
He thinks he's going to be the Archbishop of Nanjing.
He thinks he's going to be the Archbishop of Nanjing. He gets given Taiping robes. He gets given a minor office. He sits in audience. He's there for 15 months.
And what does he find?
He finds, and Thomas Riley spent years in the Taiping documents for this, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, Rebellion and the Blasphemy of Empire. Riley actually reproduces some of the annotated pages. You can see the ink. You can see what Hong did to scripture.
Define light.
Genesis 19. Lot's daughters, gone.
Gone how?
Just deleted. The whole episode. Lot gets drunk, his daughters sleep with him to continue the line, 2 nations are born. Hong looked at that and said, no, that's not happening in my Bible. Cut.
To be fair to Hong, that is a deeply weird passage.
It is a deeply weird passage. But also, Noah's drunkenness, gone. The bits where the patriarchs behave badly, tidied up. And this is the bit that breaks Roberts. Hong has annotated the margins in red ink, correcting God.
Correcting
God. There's a note where he essentially reassures God that he, Hong, understands certain points of theology better than the apostles did, and he's clarifying for future readers.
So he didn't just rewrite the Bible. He gave God notes. Did God accept the revisions, or is this still in editorial?
God did not respond to the email, no.
Hi, God. Loved the first draft. A few small notes for the Pentateuch. Happy to jump on a call.
I've left some comments in track changes. Let me know what works. Okay, but seriously, this is the moment, isn't it? This is the moment a Tennessee Baptist understands that his ex-student is not, in fact, a Christian.
This is the moment. And it gets worse, because Roberts is increasingly nervous, he's not allowed to leave easily, and in January 1862 he claims that one of Hong Rengan's officers attacked him with a sword. Whether that's true, or whether Roberts had simply lost his nerve and needed an excuse, who knows?
Probably some of both.
But he flees. Gets on a boat, and he goes from Nanjing back to the Western press denouncing the Taiping as lunatics, blasphemers, the works. Yuan Chongteng's article on him in the Journal of Asian Studies in 1963 is great on this. Roberts becomes the single most damaging Western voice against the Taiping.
And that's the pattern, right? It's always the ex-believer who does the most damage. The Koestler pattern, the Whittaker Chambers pattern.
He went to Nanjing expecting to baptize China, and he came back screaming about lunatics. And every disillusioned ideologue from then to now follows the same script.
And his testimony, Issachar Roberts, the man who actually knew Hong, that's the testimony British policymakers read.
That's one of them. The other big one, the really decisive one, is earlier, 1858, Lawrence Oliphant.
Tell me about Lawrence Oliphant.
Oliphant is Lord Elgin's private secretary. He goes up the Yangtze with the British mission in 1858, has a brief look at Nanjing, and writes, back to London, a dispatch describing the Taiping as, and I quote, religious maniacs. His narrative of the Earl of Elgin's mission to China and Japan comes out in 1859, and it's a sensation.
And that becomes the official British view.
That becomes the British view. More than any consular report, more than any missionary, more than any merchant. Oliphant is well connected, he writes well, he's there, he saw it. Religious maniacs. 2 words, done.
And here's where I have to ask the obvious question. Was he wrong?
That's the thing. He wasn't entirely wrong. Hong had a divine brother. People were having trances. The Bible had been edited. There was a real theological weirdness. But religious maniacs isn't description, it's dismissal. It's a phrase that ends the conversation.
It's the kind of phrase that makes you not have to think about anything else. Once you've labelled them maniacs, you don't need to read Hong Rengan's treatise. You don't need to read Li Shucheng's letters. You don't need to do any work.
That's exactly it. The phrase does the work of policy. And, OK, I'm going to plant something here and we'll come back to it.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
Lawrence Oliphant, the man who called the Taiping religious maniacs and shaped British policy, does not have a normal British career. His later life is, let's just say it's interesting.
How interesting.
Very interesting. We'll get there. Park it.
Suspicious. I'm parking it, but I'm parking it where I can see it.
Fair.
Okay, can I do one quick detour while we're on the topic of people who should have liked the Taiping?
Please.
Karl Marx.
Of course.
Because Marx, in this period, is not just writing Das Kapital in the British Museum reading room. He's a working journalist. He writes, somewhere around 500 articles for the New York Daily Tribune between 1851 and 1862?
Roughly 500. He's their European correspondent. He's writing about everything. The Crimean War, the Indian Mutiny, the American Civil War, factory legislation, you name it. He has hot takes on all of it.
Marx is doing op-eds. Marx has a column.
Marx has a column. And one of the reasons he does it is, frankly, capital isn't paying the bills. Engels is subsidising him. The journalism is what's keeping the household running.
Which is a whole other tangent I could go on about the fact that the foundational text of communism was written by a man being funded by his industrialist friend's textile mill in Manchester.
Hold on. Finish Marx and the Taiping first.
Right, so 1853, early 1850s, Marx is genuinely excited about the Taiping. He hopes they're a Chinese 1848. He thinks peasant revolution against a feudal dynasty, this is potentially the Asian extension of European radicalism. He's optimistic.
He's reading the early reports, sees a mass uprising, religious millenarianism that he can read as proto-revolutionary consciousness. Right, and then he reads the dispatches that keep coming back through the 1850s, and most of his information is from British papers, which is a problem, but it's what he has. And by 1862, writing in Die Presse, July 1862, he publishes Chinese Affairs, and in it he calls the Taiping an evil greater than the old rulers.
Marx?
Marx. He calls them a destructive farce. He says the Heavenly Kingdom is a Chinese horror.
That's strong language from a man who endorsed quite a lot of things. Marx, who had spent 10 years arguing that capitalism was going to immiserate the global poor and that the oppressed classes would eventually throw it off, looked at the largest peasant uprising in human history and said, no, these ones are wrong. That takes some doing. So the man writing Das Kapital is also writing op-eds for the New York papers, and he still can't bring himself to endorse the Taiping.
He cannot. And to be fair to Marx, he was reading mostly British sources, mostly hostile, the Oliphant view filtered through Reuters. So you could argue he was set up to fail, but the rejection is real. It's not lukewarm.
It's the same pattern as later Western leftists with Stalin, with Mao, with Pol Pot. The radical reaches for the foreign revolution, hopes it'll redeem the European one, then has to face what's actually there.
And Marx is at least honest enough to flip publicly. A lot of his successors weren't.
That's true. Marx changes his mind in print. Many of his disciples didn't.
OK, so Oliphant has called them maniacs. Roberts has fled screaming. Marx has published a hit piece. Hung Rengen's prime ministerial overtures have been binned by Bruce. The British have just legalised opium with the Qing.
The board is set.
The board is set. So who do they send in?
Charles George Gordon.
Charles George Gordon, of Khartoum fame.
Of eventual Khartoum fame, yes, although in March 1863, when he arrives to take over the ever-victorious army, Ward having been shot dead at 6E the previous September, he's 30 years old. He's a Royal Engineers officer, devout evangelical Christian, carries a small bamboo cane.
A cane?
A cane. Never carried a sword in his life, carried this cane. And this is John Pollock's biography, Gordon, the man behind the legend. Gordon called the cane his magic wand of victory.
A cane?
He called it his magic wand of victory. Those are real words he said about a stick.
This is a 30-year-old Royal Engineers officer whose entire battle strategy is show up with a cane and a name for the cane. That's it. That's the plan. This is a 30-year-old British officer who's decided his combat strategy is going to be turn up with a stick and a name for the stick.
And a cigar. Walking at the front of his troops, smoking, while bullets killed men beside him. Stephen Platt has a wonderful description in Autumn in the Heavenly Kingdom. Chinese soldiers being shot down on either side of Gordon, and Gordon just walking on, gesturing with the stick.
He's auditioning. He's actively auditioning for his own statue.
That's one reading. The other reading is that he was, and his diaries support this, chronically depressed, and that walking under fire was a way of letting God decide whether he lived. He had a death wish that he could intellectualize as faith.
Huh. Okay, that's darker.
It's darker, and it's why I can't quite dismiss him as just a poseur. The performance is real, but underneath the performance there's a man who genuinely doesn't care if he dies, which is terrifyingly what makes him good at his job.
Because his men see this and they think, well, if he's not running, I'm not running.
Exactly. 5,000 Chinese troops, a few dozen Western officers, steamboats, modern artillery, Enfield rifles, mobile, lethal, and they could hit a Taiping force 10 or 20 times their size and win. As Platt puts it, 5,000 men with steamboats beat armies of 100,000 without them.
Which is the same logic as the British in India. Small numbers, decisive technology, local troops.
Same logic, same template, and Gordon, for all his cane-waving theatre, was extremely effective at it. Through 1863, he takes Taikang, Quinsan, then he turns to Suzhou.
And Suzhou is where it goes wrong.
Suzhou is where it goes... Yeah, Suzhou is where the cane and cigar story stops being funny.
Take me through it.
Right. So, December 1863. Suzhou is one of the great Taiping strongholds. Beautiful canal city, enormous walls, held by a coalition of 8 Taiping kings, what they called Wangs. And by this point, it's surrounded. Gordon outside, Li Hongjiang's Qing army outside, no realistic prospect of relief.
Li Hongjiang being the Qing commander Gordon's nominally cooperating with.
Nominally cooperating with, yes. And this matters, because the 8 Wangs inside Suzhou know they're cooked, but they don't trust Li. They do, weirdly, trust Gordon, the Englishman with the cane, the one who walks under fire.
Oh no.
Yeah. So Gordon personally negotiates the surrender, goes into the city, sits down with these 8 men, and guarantees their lives. His personal word. They open the gates.
And Li Hongchang beheads them.
Beheads all 8. Displays the heads within hours.
How is nobody talking about this? Not as a war crime. I understand the 19th century. I understand how surrenders worked. But Gordon personally sat with these men. His word, his face. And Lee does it within hours? That's not politics. That's a message.
And this is the moment. This is where Gordon, the cane and cigar Gordon, the auditioning for a statue Gordon, he loses it, completely loses it. Demetrius Bulger's 1896 biography is the source for the most famous version, and Platt corroborates it from the contemporary letters. Gordon grabs a revolver, a loaded revolver, and spends, depending on the source, most of 2 days hunting Li Hongzong through the camp.
Hunting him?
Hunting him, going tent to tent. Lee's own staff are physically blocking doorways, hiding him. There's a real possibility, and Gordon's officers believed this at the time, that if he'd found Lee, he would have shot him dead.
His ally. The senior Chinese commander in the entire theatre.
His ally, who would, incidentally, go on to become one of the most important statesmen in late Qing China. Gordon was going to murder Li Hongzong in a tent over a point of honour.
Okay, so here's where I have to push back on you, because you've been very generous to Gordon all episode.
Here we go.
No, but listen. The cane, I'll give you. The cigars, I'll give you. The death wish, fine. That's dark and human, and I'll take it. But the Suzhou meltdown? I don't buy it as principle.
Why not?
Because, okay, Gordon's been in China for 9 months. 9 months! He knows Li Hongzhang. He knows how the Qing handle surrenders. He knows what happened to every Taiping prisoner taken in the last 2 years. The idea that Gordon, a serving officer in this war, genuinely thought 8 Taiping kings would be allowed to retire to the countryside on a pension. I'm sorry, no.
You think he knew?
I think on some level he knew and didn't let himself know. And when the thing he half knew was going to happen actually happened, the performance kicked in. The revolver, the 2-day manhunt, the refused reward. We'll get to the reward. It's all theatre. It's all him managing how this is going to read in the Times in 6 months.
I think that's too cynical. And here's why. The refused reward isn't a small thing, Sophie. 10,000 taels of silver. That's a fortune. Life-changing. Buy an estate money. He sent the cheque back with a letter so furious the Qing court archived it as a diplomatic incident.
He accepted the jacket.
He accepted the imperial yellow jacket eventually, yes, months later, under pressure. But the money he never took. And the man dies 21 years later at Khartoum, refusing to leave a city he could have escaped from. That's not a man managing his press. That's a man with a consistent, irritating, lifelong commitment to the gesture, even when the gesture kills him.
Or it's a man who's read enough romantic poetry to know how a martyr is supposed to behave, and he's behaving accordingly for 40 years.
You are so hard on him.
I am hard on him because everyone else has been soft on him for 160 years. He gets a statue in Trafalgar Square. He gets, 6 biographies in the Victorian period alone? The man was a brand.
Okay, but consider, if it's all performance, where's the inner contradiction? Why is the diary so full of self-loathing? Why does he write to his sister about wanting to die? Performers don't usually leave that paper trail.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
I'm not saying he wasn't theatrical. He was massively theatrical. But I think the theatre and the sincerity were the same thing for him. He couldn't tell them apart. And that's That's a more interesting figure than cynic with a cane.
All right. I'll meet you halfway. He was sincere about being theatrical. How's that?
I'll take it. That's the best deal I'm getting.
Right. So while we're on Westerners who picked a side, and Gordon obviously picked the Qing, I want to talk about someone who went the other way. Because we keep saying the West chose the Qing as if it was unanimous. It wasn't.
Lindley.
Lindley. Augustus Lindley, or as he styled himself in Chinese, Lin Lei. British naval deserter. Turns up in China around 1860, 20-something, no prospects, and he just joins the Taiping. Doesn't observe them, doesn't write a dispatch about them, fights for them. Commands a small flotilla on the Yangtze.
And marries into the cause.
Marries a Eurasian woman who fights alongside him. We don't even know her full name reliably. The sources are thin and patronising. But she's there. She's armed. She's in the boats with him. They are, by any 19th century definition, scandalous. And then the kingdom falls.
And he goes home and writes the book.
He goes home and writes Taiping Tian Kuo, The History of the Taiping Revolution, 1866. 2 volumes, 800-odd pages. A passionate, furious defence of the Taiping against basically every other English language account in existence. And he's writing this in a London where the Taiping are already a punchline, where Gordon is a national hero. He's a voice in the wilderness.
Have you read it?
Bits. It's rough going in places. He's not a stylist. But there's this passage where he writes about the Taiping as, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, a people who attempted, in the midst of unparalleled persecution, to establish a government of justice and progress. And he means it. He's not being ironic, he's not being clever. He just means it.
And he dies young.
33. In London. Poor. The book didn't sell, nobody wanted to hear it. The British public had their hero, Gordon, and their villains, Hong's lunatics, and a deserter from the Navy writing 800 pages saying, actually no, was not a marketing proposition.
He's the John Reed figure, isn't he? The Westerner who throws in with the revolution and is then not even denounced, just ignored.
Ignored is worse than denounced. Denounced means you matter.
The Foreign Office has filing cabinets full of people it decided not to bother with. Lindley's in one of those cabinets. Doesn't even get a drawer to himself.
And the thing I keep coming back to with Lindley is, was he a romantic dupe? Was he just a guy who liked the costume and the cause and married a girl with a gun? Or did he see something the dispatches missed?
I think, honestly, he probably saw both. He saw the actual humans. He fought next to them. He didn't just visit Nanjing for a fortnight and write a report. He lived it for years. And the people he lived with weren't religious maniacs.
Whereas Oliphant, back to him, Oliphant wrote his dispatch after, what, a week?
Less. And we said we'd come back to Oliphant.
We did. We absolutely did. But before Oliphant, and I want to do Oliphant properly, he deserves it, I want to course correct something. Because we've been telling this episode as the British screwed up China policy. Bruce ignored Hong Ringan, Elgin burned the palace, Gordon led the ever-victorious army, British.
And it's not quite that simple.
It's not quite that simple. Tell me about Anson Burlingame.
Right, so Burlingame is the American minister to China, arrives 1861. He's a Massachusetts man, former Republican congressman, friend of Lincoln. And he comes in with what becomes known as the cooperative policy.
Which is?
Which is, in essence, the Western powers will not compete with each other for concessions, they will not partition China the way they're partitioning Africa, and they will collectively prop up the Qing as the negotiating partner. One China, one regime, jointly preserved. And the source on all of this is Frederick Wells Williams' biography from 1912, which is hagiographic but factually solid.
So the British didn't invent saving the Qing?
The British didn't invent it. The Americans did. Burlingame goes to Bruce, goes to the French, goes to the Russians, and essentially says, look, if we all start grabbing pieces of China, we'll get a general war, we'll wreck the trade, and nobody wins. Let's instead keep the dynasty on life support and negotiate with it.
And Bruce, the same Bruce who ignored Hong Rengan, Bruce buys this?
Bruce buys this. The French buy it. And that's the framework that crystallises foreign support for the Qing all the way through the 1860s. Williams's line, and it's the line everyone quotes, is essentially that America wrote the playbook for saving the Qing. Which is, okay, that changes the picture. Because I had this very tidy story in my head where Britain, fresh from burning the Summer Palace, decides for opium reasons to back the regime, and Gordon is the instrument. But
Actually, the architecture is American.
The architecture is American, and the opium and the Gordon stuff fits inside that architecture.
Right, and this matters because Burlingame's cooperative policy is the embryo of the open door policy 30 years later. It's the embryo of every 20th century preserve the regime, don't partition the country American intervention, from the Qing to South Vietnam to pick your example.
So the standard story, Britain, prime mover, burns palace, backs dynasty, sends Gordon, that's not wrong, it's just missing a flaw. The Americans built the architecture and the British moved in because it protected the supply chain, which is somehow more depressing than either version on its own.
That's actually a fair restatement.
Huh. I didn't have that. I had Britain as the prime mover, and I'm now correcting myself in real time.
Welcome to the show.
All right, now, Oliphant. We have been promising Oliphant for 40 minutes.
We have been promising Oliphant.
So just to recap for anyone joining us, Lawrence Oliphant was Lord Elgin's secretary, visited Nanjing in 1858, wrote the dispatch that called the Taiping religious maniacs, and that single document shaped British policy more than basically any other source on the rebellion.
One man's bad week in Nanjing shapes an empire's China policy for a decade.
One man's bad week. And James, tell the room what Lawrence Oliphant did with the rest of his life.
Do you want to do it or shall I?
I'll do it. It's my callback. I have been waiting.
Go on.
The man who called the Taiping religious maniacs, the man whose dispatch persuaded the British government these people were too theologically deranged to support, that man, Lawrence Oliphant, later in life abandoned his career, his politics, and most of his sanity, and joined a religious, mystical, free love commune in upstate New York, run by a prophet called Thomas Lake Harris, who claimed to channel divine breath through his followers.
Every word of that is true.
Every word of that is true. The source is Ann Taylor's biography, Lawrence Oliphant, and she goes into the commune business in real, painful detail. The man gave Harris all his money, worked in his vineyards, believed Harris was a divinely appointed seer.
There's an even better detail. Harris arranged Oliphant's marriage and then forbade him to consummate it for years.
Oh, that's perfect. The man who diagnosed the Taiping as religious maniacs joined a sex cult that wouldn't let him have sex.
When you put it like that.
Victorian Britain. Victorian Britain produced these men. Gordon, Burton, Oliphant. They go out into the empire as the embodiment of rational Anglican Christian governance, and they come back as, mystics? Polygamists? Sun worshippers? Cane-wielding death-seekers?
The empire bred its own escapees. I genuinely believe this. The repression at home was so extreme that the people doing the empire's work overseas were the ones with the strongest reasons to want to escape it, and the empire gave them the means.
And then they came home and joined sex cults.
Or got killed in sieges, speaking of.
Oh no, we're going to Khartoum.
We have to go to Khartoum, because we can't talk about Gordon and Suzhou without finishing his story.
All right, take me to Khartoum.
So, context. Gordon leaves China in 1864. He disbands the ever-victorious army in May, 2 months before Nanjing falls. And remember, call back to Suzhou. He insists, absolutely insists, that every Chinese soldier under his command is paid in full and receives a pension. He refuses to leave Shanghai until the Qing cough up the money. And they do.
Same man. Same stubborn insistence on the agreement being honoured.